about time to recap our first mock draft for 2026. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Thursday, November 13th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. We are reunited. Today on the show, we are diving into that mock draft, 12-team Roto, standard 5x5 categories. We'll look at the early rounds, some surprising picks, basically players you might be interested to know where they wound up in this draft, and we will recap our teams towards the end. I was drafting 5th, Scott was 10th, Chris was 11th. Before we get into that, Scott, shout out to you, man. Answering your phone on a Friday night. That was amazing stuff.
Thank you. I hesitated when I saw your name. I was like, is he going to throw me into an uncomfortable situation here?
Yes. The answer was 1,000% yes.
Yes, it was. It was very uncomfortable, but you know, I'm glad I could contribute in some way. I haven't joined you guys on any of those first pitch Arizona trips yet. I had a particularly good reason not to this year. But yeah, I mean, someday I might. I might. I'm leaving the door open.
The door is open. We just need
We'll
Scott
see.
to burst on through.
Seems like people really want me to.
There's a lot of demand for your presence.
I think
there are a lot of questions you could get at this conference, like Frank, who's your favorite sleeper for next season? Chris,
nobody cares.
What prospect do you like next year?
No, nobody cares about that for sure.
Where is Scott White?
Where is Scott? They are overestimating the amount of fun I would bring to this get together.
It's the novelty of it, Scott.
The novelty. Just Scott.
Frank and I are old news.
Scott in his natural environment. Yeah. Anything but my natural environment, actually. This is my natural environment.
Yeah.
This living room that people have only seen me in for the last 7 years or so. I like that when Frank visited, and so I visited him here. We didn't just come here, though we did spend some time here. But the photo evidence of us together was this background. I made sure of that.
Yeah, of course.
So they would actually believe it was Frank.
It's like holding up the newspaper with the date in a hostage thing. That's how you prove it's real.
Yeah.
Good times. All right, Scott. Well, you know what? The door is open. We'll try again next year, but he's saying there's a chance, so we'll keep that open for next year and years to come. Let's get into this mock draft. It was our first mock of the off season. Of course, it's going to be a little bit wacky. The draft room rankings haven't been updated yet. Many of the drafters just kind of flying blind this early on. We actually did this mock draft 2 weeks ago while the World Series was still going on. So even since then, things have changed in ADP and all that kind of fun stuff. You can find the entire draft on the website, cbssports.com/fantasy/baseball. And I will put the draft results in the YouTube and podcast description. I will also pull up the draft board for those watching on YouTube, and boom. There it is. So I mentioned we'll focus on the early rounds and we'll kind of bounce around and do some other things as well. 12-team Roto, standard 5x5 categories, 2 catchers, 1 of each infield position, 1 corner, 1 middle, 5 outfielders, 1 utility bat, and then 9 total pitchers. And let's take a look here at the top 5 picks because...
Before you get into it, I just wanted to say it's probably for the best that we're focusing on the early rounds because... The draft board, the 2026 draft board is very much in its infancy right now. And there's a lot of flying by the seat of the pants. There hasn't really been a true consensus to form, particularly since NFBC ADP wasn't even up when we did this. I think now some consensus will start to form around this ADP, but even then, it's going to look very different 5 months from now when the vast majority of people are drafting. So I think the early rounds are a little more have been talked through a little more. They're maybe a little more solid, but beyond that, it's just complete and utter chaos. And that was certainly true for this draft. Some picks were made that would honestly send me into a rage if I let it. But I know I'm also one of the few people who's fully ranked for 2026 now, and that gives me, it makes it so that I have an advantage, I guess. But you get what I'm saying. Like, it's people are flying by the seat of their pants.
Not everybody's an overachiever like you, Scott.
Not everybody has the time to devote to it during football season.
Some of us have to do our homework at the last minute.
Full transparency, I used Scott's rankings for this draft because I don't have any myself yet. And I would imagine that's most of the drafters at this point in the offseason. We have talked about the top 5 a lot, and it feels like there is a consensus top 5. What order are they going to go in? I think that might change from draft to draft. But in this one, we saw Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Jose Ramirez, and then Bobby Witt Jr. to me at pick 5. Again, I think this is a clear top 5, but I was pretty shocked to get Witt last of the 5 here.
Yeah, I think the 2 surprising things are Ohtani ahead of Judge in a league where you effectively don't get credit for his pitching. You can start him there, but then you don't get credit for his hitting that week if you do. So effectively, it's just a one-way Ohtani. I think Judge should go ahead of him. And yeah, I think Witt should still be 3rd. Mostly because I think we have, as we talked about on the First Pitch Arizona pod, very real questions, and we've talked about many times otherwise, real questions about how many stolen bases you're actually going to get from Juan Soto. Frank, you and I think set the over-under at 19.5.
And Steamer projections came out. Projected Juan Soto for 20 steals on the nose. So.
And that would be the 2nd most in his career by like 8 or something, right? 8 more than his 2nd highest total so far. So even that would be a relative outlier. I genuinely have no idea, but I do think Bobby Witt's profile is just a little more fantasy friendly because of the elite stolen bases. I think he's a better bet for batting average as well. Soto will hit for more power, certainly.
I don't think I do have Bobby Witt 3rd overall because I think probably his 2025 is at the low end of what we should expect from him, and he's clearly a better batting average source than Ramirez, and I think also Soto, we have to say at this point. But Witt is not like the clear-cut number 3.
Yeah, sure.
I think Ohtani and Judge in some order, and for what it's worth, early ADP does have Ohtani ahead of Judge. So those are 1 and 1A.
I don't get that one.
Yeah, I don't either, but they're 1 and 1A. It's not the sort of thing that's going to really get a big reaction out of me. And then that Witt, Soto, Ramirez cluster, which is how I order them personally. They went Soto, Ramirez, Witt in this draft, but that's kind of 3A, and 3B. So it doesn't really bother me what order they go in. I am a little surprised Witt was taken 3rd of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if there's people out there that think Soto might just continue to run, maybe not 38 steals, but if you trust the steals a little bit more, it's totally defensible to take him as high as 3 in this spot, which is what we saw. So the back of the first round, picks 6 through 12, we get Elly De La Cruz, Corbin Carroll, Kyle Tucker, Ronald Acuna Jr., Tarek Skubal went to Scott, Garrett Crochet to Chris, and then Julio Rodriguez at 12. So definitely a few things to touch on here. Before we get to your pitcher picks, Kyle Tucker at 8. Wanted to mention this. I'm good with it here. I'm good with like a mid to late first round pick on Kyle Tucker. Early ADP has him at 18.3. I got him in the draft I just did this past weekend at First Pitch Arizona at pick 16. And obviously, I was
it's not going to last.
Ecstatic to get that. I think part of it is he's a free agent.
I think all of it is he's a free agent. Like in NFBC leagues specifically, those free agents' values are just outrageously suppressed, and it's been a constant over the years, enough that like we have to just factor it into our analysis. But go ahead and finish your thought.
I think the fact that a lot of NFBC leagues are 15-team leagues and there's no IL spots either. I think there is kind of a, hey, he's been hurt 2 years in a row.
Yes.
Even though those injuries are not related in any way, I think people are worried about him missing time in the future too.
I definitely think there's some of that. I don't want to say it's just that he's a free agent. I think people are concerned about the injuries. I don't think they should be, really. I think these were... I don't know. Unless you think there is some mechanism that makes Kyle Tucker harder to diagnose than other hitters, I think it was just a fluke thing that he dealt with that shin injury that got misdiagnosed in 2024, and then the hand injury was initially misdiagnosed, right? And then it turned out that they were just like, am I getting the timeline right? That like they misdiagnosed it. It was a fracture that they misdiagnosed as a strain.
Yeah, both years it was an injury that wasn't called a fracture at first, and then was later discovered to be.
But I think the distinction between 2024 and 2025 is the Cubs eventually diagnosed the injury correctly and just didn't tell us, if I'm remembering the way that worked out. That they were just kind of playing coy about what the true nature of the injury was, where the Astros genuinely bungled the situation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I see a distinction for our purposes.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one that really raises an eyebrow for me is Elly De La Cruz at 6th. As I sit here in my Reds t-shirt, that felt like, and I feel like in this particular draft, there was a lot of defaulting to last year's, to where they were drafted last year. Cause Elly De La Cruz 6th heading into 2025 in a Roto league would not have been a surprise at all. But we saw the stolen bases, especially, drop off quite a bit. I'm not going to say they fell off a cliff. He was still a good base stealer, but he went from being like the best base stealer to just another good base stealer. And I think under Terry Francona, I've actually read about how this was part of his philosophy with the Reds, only encouraging them to run in the situations where it made sense rather than just to pile up steals. So I think Elly De La Cruz, the most we should hope for from him steals wise going forward is 40. At least as long as Terry Francona is there. Now, he couldn't prove as a hitter. I still have him as a first rounder, but end of first round rather than middle where he was taken here.
I will point out he is basically the number 6 player in ADP at NFBC. It's very early, only 34 drafts. Just kind of tack that on every time we talk about this, but his ADP is 8.03. That's tied with Corbin Carroll and just behind Tarek Skubal at 7.79. So effectively, he's the number 6 pick. And I think that's the right range. I mostly buy into the slow second half being the result of the injury that he was playing through, the quad injury.
I buy that as a hitter, but I don't think the steals are coming back.
I don't think he's a 65 steal guy again, but like in the second half, he was more like a 25 to 30 steal guy. I think he's clearly going to be better than that. And for what it's worth,
would you take him over Corbin
29...
Carroll, Kyle Tucker, Ronald Acuna, which happened in this draft? Because I would take all 3 of those outfielders over De La Cruz.
I would take...
And the 2 pitchers.
I think I would take Carroll, and I would take Acuna. I don't think I would take... Who's the other? Tucker? Yeah, Tucker. I don't think I would, but I think it's okay. The thing
I thought you had Tucker ahead of Carroll.
No, I don't think I've done that yet, have I?
Okay.
But the one thing I would say is, man, Elly looked like he was really figuring it out as a hitter in the first half. And so, you know, if he's only a 40 to 45 steal guy or maybe 50 at the highest end, okay, but I do think we will see, barring injury, the best hitter version of Elly De La Cruz we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Both of you guys took pitchers here. Scott, you took Skubal. Chris, you took Crochet. Scott, is this just because Skubal was available, or were you just planning to take a pitcher no matter what at this pick? Well, not no matter what. I assume if Acuna was there, you might have done it, but...
Yeah, no, I didn't go into this draft saying, let me take a pitcher and see how it goes. Skubal was the top player on my draft board. I think he was exactly 10th for me. And so the top 9 players here, not in the same order, but the top 9 players taken were my top 9 players. Skubal was there. I've said a few times on this podcast that I'm more open this year than I've been in the last several years to taking one of the elite early round starting pitchers, because I think Skubal, Crochet, and Skeens so clearly stand out from the rest of the starting pitcher crop that I feel like the advantage they give me at that position is justifies the little bit of risk that comes with taking a pitcher this early versus a hitter. So I took Skubal at 10th because that was my 10th best player.
And Chris, we'll get to you in a second because you actually took pitchers with both of your first 2 picks. For those watching or listening, would you take a pitcher in the first round? Drop a comment on YouTube or let us know in the live chat. And after you do that, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for a bunch of off-season fantasy baseball content. Let's take a quick break. We'll get into round 2 right after this.
Only CBS Sports can bring you big time during the heart of Saturday afternoons. It's big time.
It's big time. It's big time. It's big time.
On CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball. Today we are recapping our first mock draft for 2026, and we are jumping into round 2, which means I should probably change what is up on the screen for those watching. So round 2, we have Vlad Jr., who is paired up with Julio Rodriguez, then Paul Skeens to Chris, Francisco Lindor to Scott, Cal Raleigh, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Nick Kurtz. So Chris, pocket aces, Crochet, and Skeens. That is spicy. Without giving away your entire team, how do you think it worked out, starting with 2 pitchers in this draft?
Yeah, mostly I just wanted to see what it would look like and see if it's a viable strategy, because I think it's going to be a thing this year. It's been a while since we've had a true pocket aces approach being viable. I think probably I really think you have to go back to the Kershaw DeGrom era when those were the top 2 pitchers where people were really talking about it. We've moved away from that. But like Scott said, I think those first 3 guys are... It's about those 3 being head and shoulders above the rest of the position. I also think that's just, once you get past those 3, I think it's a lot flatter at the position to, we talked about those kind of 4 through 12 or 4 through 15 being very similar, however you want to break it up. And I think that's also a reason that I don't know if I necessarily want to skip this top 3 and end up having to take one of those 4 through 15 and, the guy I want not being there, or people start pushing them up into the 2nd or 3rd round at a price that I'm just not comfortable with for those guys at all. So I wanted to experiment and see if pocket aces was a viable approach. The offense, you have to make some sacrifices for sure. You're not going to get as many of those true 5 category guys. My approach in this one was to kind of focus on, I took a few interesting young guys, but for the most part, it was more boring volume plays at hitter. Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, Nico Horner, very good players, but not necessarily guys that people are going to be really excited to push up their boards. And so I think it worked out okay. I'm not totally in love with it. I'm not saying it's the best way that you can build a team, but I think it works.
I was going to do it if you didn't. I wasn't looking forward to it, but I really wanted to use this first mock draft mainly just to test the viability of my rankings, which I had completed, as I said before doing this mock draft. That's actually why I scheduled the mock draft for when I did, as soon as I finished putting together my rankings. Mock draft time. So I had taken Skubal in round 1. I hadn't imagined Skeens would make it to me in round 2. But I was prepared to do it if Chris hadn't taken Skeens 1 pick before me. So I would have been the one trying to figure out offense. And I imagine, how many rounds did you go without taking a pitcher after taking Crochet and Skeens, Chris?
I took Yohan Duran in the 9th round. And then so I didn't take another starting pitcher until Chris Bubich in the 15th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I really pushed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What round did you take Misiorowski? Because I know you wound up with him.
Some of those young guys really fell because I was planning on taking Chase Burns in the 11th round, and I think he got taken 1 pick ahead of me. And Misiorowski was the 16th round. That's not going to happen.
No.
I don't think you should wait that long, but I think when I wrote your teams on the rundown, earlier today, I thought you played it right. I thought waiting on your SP3, and I thought your rotation kind of still came together all right.
Yeah, look, there's
but it
plenty
might not.
Yeah.
To Chris's point, like a lot of starting, once we get into the mid-round range of this early mock draft, there were a lot of pitchers taken well before they should have been, just because people were working with incomplete rankings, just, going with gut feel or whatever. Mizorowski's actual, so Chris took him 186th, I believe, 182nd. His actual ADP is 127. Yeah. So to his point, and like Cam Schlittler 130. They're those specific upsidey pitchers probably aren't lasting that long in a draft by the time we're drafting for keeps.
The only other thing I wanted to mention here from the top part of the second round, Vlad Jr. over Kurtz, I think is pretty interesting. The early ADP has that reversed with Kurtz at 16.4 and Vlad at 20.6. And I think that's probably going to be the case in most drafts. Kurtz over Vlad, but
yeah, I was all I could figure is Vladimir Guerrero. Again, this was in the middle of the World Series, and Vladimir Guerrero had a great postseason performance, and so maybe he got a little bit of a bump in this draft. Maybe Drew Klein, who took him, just really has a strong feeling about Guerrero, but I think of him as more like a late second rounder than the first pick in round 2, where he went here, given the questions over his power production. Only hit 23 home runs, only drove in 84 runs this past year, and that was without missing any time for injury.
I think we're also already seeing Vlad's price get pushed up. I don't know, it's only a handful of drafts, but I would guess he was closer to like 24, 25, even before the end of the World Series. So I think you're already seeing a little bit of price inflation there that will probably die off by the time we get a little further removed from the World Series. I would guess.
I know the Steamer projections have Vlad much higher than Nick Kurtz, but I also think that they're a little bit more conservative on, first and second year players and things like that. So, just take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean everything, but I know a lot of people do draft based off of projections. So, those are probably going to get closer, Vlad versus Kurtz. The back half of round 2, we had Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Trio to me, Ketel Marte, Junior Caminero.
Caminero.
Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner. So I paired Trio up with Bobby Witt. Love it. Power, speed, batting average to start with both of those guys. And get used to seeing Caminero this early. It might, shock some people who haven't, thought about, drafts for next season or anything like that. His early ADP is actually much higher than this. It's 14.7. And in this draft, he went at pick 22. I do think part of that is just how bad third base is too. I think that's played a factor early on.
Yeah. I mean, you had a 21-year-old third baseman hit 45 home runs. I don't think it should shock anybody to see he was drafted in round 2.
And he was the top prospect in baseball. It's not like this came out of nowhere. Even more than Nick Kurtz, Junior Caminero was expected to be this kind of guy.
Yeah. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be there, but, people checking back in for the first time might think, oh, I was getting Caminero at, pick 80 last year. Wow, now I got to use a second-round pick. That's a lot more expensive.
How do we feel about Cal Raleigh? He went 16th overall. That is about where I have him, but I think I have him higher than...
It's going to happen.
ADP has him at 16.5. It won't be me who does it, but I think he's deserving of being drafted that high.
I think there are too many ways for things to go wrong for a catcher to justify taking him that high. Maybe I'll get to the point where I put my rankings together, and that's going to start in the next couple of weeks. Put my overall rankings together, and that's just where he ends up. That's entirely possible, but I'm a little skeptical of that price right now. It's also just, I know he stole 14 bases last year.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that anybody's drafting him for steals.
But you are.
If he's a 50 homer catcher
Sure.
with 0 steals, he's still worth a second round pick.
But I do think you have to keep in mind that you're probably putting yourself at a disadvantage in 2 categories by taking him that high. He's probably going to be the lowest batting average player taken in the first couple of rounds. He's probably going to be one of the worst stolen base guys. Funny enough, Nick Kurtz is probably the only one, or one of the only ones, who I would project to be certainly worse in steals. Schwarber as well. But like all 3 of those guys are probably going to hit 250-ish. And I guess Kurtz, maybe there's room for more because he's so young, but the XBA was like 255 or something for him. So I probably won't be doing that just because it's hard to dig a hole. It's hard to dig yourself out of a ratios hole with your early picks.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. We are into round 3. We see Jazz Chisholm, Pete Crow Armstrong, Pete Alonso, James Wood, Yordan Alvarez went to me, and then Logan Gilbert, who was the SP4 off the board in this draft, and obviously has been a widespread conversation so far in the offseason. PCA and James Wood, despite the awful second halves, drafted in the early 3rd round here. You guys agree with that? You good with that?
I mean, if you're just looking at their overall numbers, I think this is where you draft them. And I think that's probably what you should do, is not slice and dice the season, say, this is how he was in the second half, so let's project that over a full season. But just take the totality of their season with all the ups and downs, regardless of the timing of them, and say, okay, he came out with these numbers at this age, at this stage of his career. What kind of trajectory does that put him on? And it's still a very strong trajectory for both of them. So I think you're factoring in enough of the risk here by letting them last to round 3. And that's about where I put him, is early round 3. So I would be willing to take them at that point. And honestly, they kind of form a barrier here between the obvious 1st and 2nd round types, which I believe the 1 through 24 were my exact 1 through 24. Again, not in the same order, but it was the same players. And then you get this barrier with Pete Crow Armstrong, James Wood, kind of riskier. But then after them, you see a clear drop off in terms of what a player is capable of statistically, or at least what we expect them to do statistically. So they're kind of your last chance at maybe getting that 1st, 2nd round type production, just with a little more risk.
The one exception I would say for that is a guy who's actually going a little bit later than he was drafted in this one, I believe, and that's Yordan Alvarez, who I do think. I don't know about you guys. I was on a panel at First Pitch Arizona, and we were talking about, like, it was a hitter-focused panel, and I got Yordan Alvarez, and I basically said I have 0 performance concerns about Yordan Alvarez. I know he had a sub-800 OPS last season. He had 1 bad month and then got hurt, and then played like himself when he came back before getting hurt again. I know the injuries are a big concern, but you are looking at one of the few players who I think legitimately could. How many players in Major League Baseball could you see hitting 350 homers in the same season? Like, in a absolute best case scenario. I think Yordan Alvarez has that kind of skill set.
3, maybe?
I could see Aaron Judge doing it. Shohei Ohtani, I'm pretty sure they've both done that.
Yeah.
I could see Juan Soto in a best case scenario. The power is a little iffy. Maybe you want to dream on Nick Kurtz, or maybe, but like, Yordan Alvarez has shown the necessary skills to do both of those things, right? He hits the ball incredibly hard. He's got phenomenal plate discipline. It's just, can he stay on the mound? The not mound,
diamond,
the field, the
box. The Astros might need him on the mound if they don't.
But I was very upset when you took him, because I think if you are going to go pocket aces, Yordan Alvarez is like the perfect player to build your strategy around, and in most cases, based on the ADP, that should work. He should make it back to you at the end of the 3rd round. He didn't here. It was very frustrating. I would feel a lot better about this team if you swapped Yordan Alvarez in it at UT and literally anyone at first base.
I actually disagree with your last point entirely. I think I'm much more likely to take Yordan Alvarez in a situation like I did, where he's my third hitter. There's no way I would want him as my first hitter, because I do think there is still a lot of risk. And then obviously you have to build around him after that. I would like to almost cushion him with one or two hitters before I draft Yordan Alvarez, because then if he gets hurt, you kind of have those other names to fall back on.
But
that's just me.
But when you're looking at the other guys I could have taken there, like Bryce Harper, Rafael Devers.
Yeah, they come with risks too. Yeah, I get
Manny Machado, Bryce Terang. Like, I certainly wouldn't feel better about any of those guys as my first hitter than Yordan Alvarez, and maybe that's a reason to not take pocket aces. But
I mean, what Chris is proposing is the higher upside approach.
Yes.
Like, you just presume. You just scratch out 2025 for Yordan Alvarez. It doesn't count. You look at what he did 24, 23, 22, 21, a 4-year stretch.
Legit 4 category stuff.
If he just gives you that, it's a steal in round 3. It's like you got a first round hitter, more or less. I mean,
there have been some weird counting stats.
He's never gotten to 100 in runs in RBI before. He's never actually gotten to 40 in home runs, much less 50. So I get what you're saying, that he has the skill set to do it, but realistically, you're hoping he hits 290 with 35 homers and maybe 90 runs in RBI. So borderline first round production potentially in round 3.
The big thing for me is it's so hard if you're not getting elite hitters like early first 2 rounds. It's so hard to make up batting average, and he's the one guy in that range that I feel extremely confident is going to give me a very good batting average.
So we saw Paul Skeens go at pick 14, and then we didn't see another pitcher drafted again until Logan Gilbert at 30. And that makes sense, right? I mean, based on what we've said, I mean, there is a huge drop off, I think, in talent and reliability from those top 3 pitchers to, everybody else. And then it's a huge tier. So you almost want to wait for someone else to take a pitcher and then kind of dive into that tier. So I think that totally makes sense. And we're going to start to see more pitchers go off the board here as well. In the back half of round 3, we saw Mookie Betts, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Christopher Sanchez, Matt Olson went to Scott, Bryce Harper to Chris, and then Rafael Devers. So, again, once you see that SP4 go, we kind of get a bit of a snowball effect here. Other pitchers going, Yamamoto, Christopher Sanchez in that same tier. Scott, I know you said you would wait until round 4, I believe, for another pitcher to come off the board. But again, once we see one, you're going to start to see that kind of snowball effect. So,
yeah. And, technically I have 2 pitchers ranked at the end of round 3. Chris Sale is my 34th player. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is my 35th player. Then Logan Gilbert, 38th. Of course, Logan Gilbert was the first of the 3 to go in this draft. I'm just saying, I'm less likely to do that than I am to take Tarek Skubal or Crochet or Skeens at the round 1-2 turn. I'm less likely to take any of those pitchers I rank in round 3. I would probably take, who I actually took here, like a Matt Olson over them. Kind of depends how my team's coming together. By the way, like this round ends Matt Olson, Bryce Harper, Rafael Devers, and all 3 first basemen. Devers doesn't qualify at third base anymore. I have those 3 back to back to back in my own ranking. Like, to me, there is basically no way to differentiate between those 3, Olson, Harper, and Devers, in terms of I mean, what categories they're going to help you in, what kind of upside they have, what kind of downside risk there is with them. Like, they are that trifecta at first base is as close as I think I've ever seen at any infield position. And by the way, I actually ranked Pete Alonso just 2 spots ahead of that trio. So it's almost 4 in a row. And by the way, Freddie Freeman is just 2-3 spots behind that trio. So it's like this cluster of 5 first basemen that are more or less equivalent. So, like, the time to get a first baseman is mid round 3 to mid round 4. Just like pencil that into your thinking. Like, if you want to pass up Vladimir Guerrero at the end of round 1 where he was taken. Actually, it was early round 2, but that's all the more reason not to take him that early. If you want to pass up Nick Kurtz and not take on that risk of a sophomore slump, like just understand that at 3-4 turn, there's going to be a lot of first base options available. That might not really be any worse than Guerrero and Kurtz.
All right, let's take our final break, and when we return, we will run through round 4. We'll talk about some surprising picks and recap our teams. We'll do all that right after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today, recapping our first mock draft for 2026. And we are into round 4, where we saw Blake Snell, Manny Machado go to Chris, Bryce Terang to Scott, Chris Sale, Hunter Brown, and Max Fried. Blake Snell drafted as the SP7. What do you guys think about that?
I think you people are crazy about Blake Snell. I just like this is too early, and he's, you know, his ADP is 22 picks later than this. I still think that's too early for a guy who, like, for all we crap on guys who get hurt a lot, Blake Snell just seems to like skate past that criticism in a lot of ways, even though he is also a headache. I don't even want to say that he's inconsistent, because the final numbers end up being very good. But we do this every year. You know what the Blake Snell experience is like. And look, maybe everyone who's taking him is just well aware that they can ride that ride and live with it. But I've seen how all of you play fantasy baseball. I know Blake Snell's going to give you a headache. Why take that on in the 4th round?
But Chris, you're usually the one who doesn't crap on the injury-prone player. So if you're acknowledging that Blake Snell's final numbers, other than the innings total, are consistently great, I get why. So like he went 7th among starting pitchers here, Frank. That's too early. I have him 13th, but you don't even have him in your top 20, right, Chris?
Let me pull it up. I think he's around 20.
I don't really see a lot more risk to taking Snell than Jacob deGrom, who's 37. He managed to stay reasonably healthy finally for the first time in like 5 years. But there comes a point where you want ace production to any degree you can get it, because once you get beyond that top 13, 14, 15 in the rankings, then I don't think anybody's looking at Jesus Luzardo or Freddie Peralta as an ace, really, from a fantasy perspective.
I would say Blake Snell is a very good bet to give you ace-like strikeout rates. He's just about one of the best in baseball there. And I think he's a very good bet to give you an ace-like run prevention mark.
Meaning
Blake Snell, ERA. Blake Snell tends to be kind of harmful in WHIP. Actually, for his career, he has exactly 2 seasons with a WHIP below 119. That's not very good. They're the 2 seasons he won Cy Young. They're the only perfect 2 seasons. Right, but I'm just saying, how good of a bet is Blake Snell for anything except ERA?
Well, again, back to my point, how good of a bet is any of the pitchers taken 16 and beyond? For they all have their limitations.
Sure. I guess where did Cole Reagans go in this draft? Because
middle of round 5,
Cole Reagans should be ahead of Blake Snell. Sure.
In those NFBC drafts, they go back to back. If that happens, I think that's fine. I think that's a good pairing of risk and reward around the 60th pick.
I'm not comparing Blake Snell to him, though maybe ADP does. I'm comparing him to like Jesus Luzardo, Freddie Peralta.
Yeah, but Peralta goes ahead of him. I think that's a mistake. I think that's people overreacting to a good season from Peralta from another guy like Blake Snell, who I don't know how confident you can feel in Freddie Peralta helping you outside of ERA, and even then, he's been mid to high threes pretty regularly as well. So I think that's a bad one.
Again, DeGrom's going 20 picks ahead of Snell.
Sure, I can be talked into that being a mistake. DeGrom was healthy last year. Snell wasn't. I think that's the thought process. But I think you can put Snell in that larger second tier and feel okay about it. But I think he's not going to be my ace. I guess that's just the way.
He definitely went too early in this draft. That's no arguments there. He went ahead of Chris Sale, who's my number 4. So.
Yeah. But
all right.
I get it.
Yeah. The back half of round 4, we saw Jaron Duran, Brian Wu went to me, Cody Bellinger, Wyatt Langford, Freddie Freeman, Jackson Merrill. So I did not plan to start my draft with 3 hitters, but once the top 3 pitchers were off the board, they didn't make it to me in round 2. I wasn't going to be the first pitcher I wasn't going to take the SP4 in the middle of round 2. I wasn't going to do it in the middle of round 3 either. I'll wait for someone else to kind of start that snowball, and then I'll jump into the middle of that tier, and that's how I wound up with Brian Wu here in round 4, and I'm totally fine with the way that worked out. Jaron Duran at pick 43, Jackson Merrill at 48. Is that enough of a discount, do you guys think, after the down seasons there for Duran and Jackson Merrill?
Well, I know I'm out on a limb on Merrill in a bad way. Like I've ranked Jackson Merrill, so there's no way I'm going to draft him. So maybe I am not the proper person to ask about him. He went 48th here. His ADP is 61. So I think even from just even comparing it to the consensus, this is too early for Jackson Merrill. I personally have him 88th. So yeah, I'm not going to get Jackson Merrill. I'm certainly not going to get him at 48.
Yeah.
I think I'll rank him top 50. So it's probably okay, but I certainly don't think it's a slam dunk as the last pick of the 4th round. But if he had made it to me with my next pick, I would have been thrilled to get him because I do think there's a lot of batting average upside. I have some questions about the stolen bases after he stole, 1 last year?
1, yeah.
But I mostly give him, I think Jackson Merrill's a 290 hitter. I feel pretty confident in that. I think there's going to be power. It's just, can he be a 290 hitter with 25 homers and 15 steals? I think he's physically capable of it. I just don't know how much of a priority that's going to be for him.
And I think the disparity, the reason why I'm so much lower on Merrill than the consensus is I am making a concerted effort to kind of re-emphasize actual production. Not over theoretical production, over some of the underlying StatCast numbers that we've given so much credit to in recent years, but
except for pulled air rate,
to at least, I mean, that's a data point. They're all relevant data points, is what I'm saying. But I am not just going to ignore actual production for the sake of the StatCast production, because I think that's zigging while everyone else is zagging, because most people are just ranking purely on the underlying StatCast data and kind of ignoring top line production. That's just where the industry is these days. And B, I think it's burned us a lot doing that. So I'm not, it still matters. I'm not saying the StatCast stuff doesn't matter. Pull air rate certainly matters, but there is going to be, I am going to put a little more emphasis this year on seeing is believing. Sure. And particularly for somebody like Merrill, who has so little track record, I think he could hit 290 and it wouldn't be a surprise. But I am not going to draft him expecting 290, and that's why I haven't ranked where I rank him.
I will say I don't think Jaron Duran should go ahead of Jackson Merrill ever. And in a large part, like they're sort of similar players. Duran obviously less of a hitter, more of a base stealer. Don't know where he's going to be playing, but he should be playing every day. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't, although I have my concerns about whether Jarren Duran actually is an everyday player with his stats against lefties. It's like a 600 OPS for his career, but Jarren Duran's going to be 29. And I think Jackson Merrill's 22. So
see, I am expecting. I think Merrill has more batting average upside. He has more power upside. I don't think he has a ton more power upside. And steals, I am thinking Duran is at worst a B plus in steals, probably an A minus, and Merrill might be an F.
Duran probably doubles up what Merrill does.
I mean, he had 23 or 24 more this year, so that there was a big gap between those two.
So I'm actually putting Duran quite a bit ahead of Merrill, but
I think we'll see a lot of drafts, and even the early ADP reflects this, where those guys go very similar ranges. They were both like second, third round picks last year. They disappointed. I think they're both they'll be maybe fourth or fifth round picks this upcoming season with Duran and Jackson Merrill. Last name I'll mention here, it is odd seeing Freddie Freeman at the end of the fourth round, but I think it does make sense. He's entering his age 36 season. This is also the lowest Freeman's ADP has been since 2016, which is pretty crazy to think about there, with one of the best to ever do it. Let's quickly run through some news and notes, and then we'll get back into this mock draft that we did. And the Cy Young Award winners were announced. No surprises here. Tarek Skubal in the American League. That's back-to-back for Skubal, the best pitcher in baseball, and Paul Skeens, unanimous winner in the NL. Starts his career Rookie of the Year and Cy Young.
It's pretty good. Pretty good.
Sub 2 ERA both times.
Yeah. We saw Skubal. He was at one of the Mesa Solar Sox, I think, games.
He was rooting on his hopefully future teammate Kevin McGonigal.
He had a couple of probably not future teammates out there. At least McGonigal might be a future teammate. I think it's like Max Anderson. I think was in the lineup in that game as well. I think it's pretty unlikely him and Tarek Skubal ever play with each other, at least in Detroit. But yeah, he was out there.
Yeah,
showing some support.
It is that time of the baseball calendar. Scott Boras was at the GM meeting speaking in Boris-isms. Did you guys have a favorite that you saw today?
I have to say, I don't think I had ever seen a video of him doing this.
How does he remember all of them?
I couldn't watch it. It was like one of the most painfully awkward things I've ever seen. It was like I think you should leave skit. Watching him try to get through this, like,
it kind of was.
It works on the page, I guess. Although I'm kind of over it as well. Everyone's like, "Oh," and it's like, well, he's just like he's not saying anything, Like he said a lot of P's. Like, what is this P for Pendetta? I don't know. You remember that movie?
Pretty good movie.
I don't remember that movie.
I'm kind of over this thing, is what I'm saying. I'm kind of like this is like a 65-year-old man like memorizing bad pun monologues, and it was just watching.
How long has he been doing it? Like 20 years?
Yeah, something like that.
I would think by year 3 it would be played out.
Yeah, I don't like.
This keeps going back to the well.
Are the winter meetings really this boring? Like, is that like that this is the only exciting or interesting thing happening out there? Why is this such a big deal? I don't get it.
So I do just have to read the Pete Alonso one, and it was my favorite of the day. There's no doubt Pete's pursuers are primed to pay the power piper. Pete picked a perfect period to play preeminently at a primary position. A playoff parched plethora will pounce to participate in the polar plunge.
Like, that's just bad. Like, that just like.
But it reminds me of it reminds me of John Sterling, right? Like, it's so bad that it's good.
I guess.
Is that John Sterling though?
No, John.
Well, he's got his like, Giancarlo,
but is that the thought that it's so bad it's good? Is that?
Yes, I think that's
my take on
Pete
it.
Picked a perfect period to play preeminently at a primary position. He played the same position he always plays.
That means nothing. Like, with first base is a primary position. Like, it's like the 9th most important defensive position in baseball. It's incredibly easy.
Picking something. He was playing off the tongue twister,
But that's the problem, is he's forcing himself into these
Yeah.
Come on.
Nonsensical, like the
Scott Boris.
Nobody wants a Brexit one.
Oh my gosh,
he's trying too hard. He's trying too hard.
The Alex Bregman ones, it was all coffee related because
it was all like Dunkin' Donuts.
He just played in Beantown, and
I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
It was something. By the way, Chris, I did pull this up for you.
Giancarlo. Non si può stopparlo.
I mean, it's a classic. Japanese starting pitcher Tatsuya Imai will be posted on November 19th. So he will have 45 days to sign once he is posted. And we mentioned yesterday there was a lot of excitement about him at First Pitch Arizona. Eno Saris mentioned he would rank as a top 30 starting pitcher for him heading into fantasy. So definitely a name we need to learn there, Tatsuya Imai.
Lance Brostowski had a great video breaking him down maybe a week or two ago. That's worth checking out as well.
Yeah. Other updates from the GM meetings. Yordan Alvarez has begun jogging at roughly 70% after his season ended with a nasty left ankle sprain. Josh Hader has thrown off a mound 3 times after his season ended with a left shoulder strain. Isaac Paredes is about 65% recovered from his hamstring injury. They said he should be 80 to 90% by the start of spring, hopefully 100% by opening day. I didn't love reading that.
Yeah, I mean, you start doing the math on it because like that injury was in like late July, right? Or like late June, maybe?
But it was a nasty.
Yeah, it was really bad.
It was like a hamstring tear that he borderline needed surgery for. And then they rushed him back to play the final week of the season. So
that's a little concerning.
Yeah, something to pay attention to there. Byron Buxton could be open to waiving his no-trade clause for certain teams if the Twins continue to sell off players. The Braves will have a better idea in January about whether Sean Murphy will be ready for opening day or not. Brian Cashman views Ben Rice as having an everyday role next season. So,
let's go.
That didn't seem like something we needed confirtion of.
Yeah,
I didn't think.
Maybe he
hadn't been playing he hadn't played every day yet.
Just
that was my biggest hesitation with Ben Rice is would the Yankees entrust him with a true everyday role? And so I am encouraged to hear this from Brian Cashman.
Scott, you are not the only one who loves Rice Baby because the early ADP is 75. So people are very excited. And after hearing this from Cashman, I think it's only going to go up. So
I think he might end up being like the number 2 or 3 catcher by the time.
I think peaking too early. I have him 84. So
I don't think he'll pass William Contreras, but I could see him getting up to 3 and being ahead of Hunter Goodman and Shea Langelier or someone like that. Last news item here, Phillies outfield prospect Justin Crawford has a strong chance to open the season in the majors. Of course, son of former major leaguer Carl Crawford. Have to, of course, let you know that.
The great Carl Crawford.
The great Carl Crawford. Turning 22 in January, a first-round pick in 2022. Justin Crawford just hit .334 in the minors with 88 runs scored, 46 steals, only 7 homers. He actually hits the ball harder than you would expect for a quote-unquote speedster, but it also comes with a 60% ground ball rate. So I actually think the hit tool is pretty legit here. I don't know that he'll be able to hit for really much power at all, but just in terms of hitting the ball hard, ground balls getting through, line drives, and a bunch of steals, I think that's all possible for Justin Crawford.
I like him. I do. I think the league allows for this type of player a little more again. Honestly, similar to Carl Crawford. Now, Carl Crawford did develop like 15 to 20 homer power eventually. And as hard as Justin Crawford hits the ball, it's possible he does too. I mean, it's mostly a launch angle issue. But even if he doesn't, as a speedy guy, keeping the ball on the ground, going the opposite way with it a bunch. I mean, we've seen that Chandler Simpson works. We've seen that Xavier Edwards as a hitter, he works. He stopped running so much in his second year, but he hit well enough. I think Justin Crawford could be in a similar mold to both of them with even some hope that they don't have of developing power because he hits the ball pretty hard.
All right, here we are. We are going to wrap up quickly here with going back to the mock draft. I'll leave this up to you because we don't have time for both. Do you guys want to take a look at interesting players and where they got drafted and just mention their early ADP, or recap our final teams?
I'd rather look at interesting players, I think.
Same.
Okay. So you're probably wondering where some of these guys got drafted. I will let you know what pick they went in the early ADP. You guys just let me know which one you agree with more, where they went in this draft or where the early ADP is trending. So Geraldo Perdomo, first name, got to mention. He went at pick 50 in this draft. The early ADP is 81.5.
I have him higher than 50th either, actually. So I agree with where he went in this mock.
Chris?
I'm going to be closer to where he went in this than where his ADP is.
Okay, so you're both of you guys are closer to 50. I will be closer to ADP, I think, on Geraldo Perdomo. Byron Buxton went at pick 57. The early ADP is 72.7. What do you think on Buxton?
I know Scott likes him a lot. I think both are probably too early.
I have him 47, so I got to agree with the 57 where he went in this draft.
Roman Anthony went at pick 68. His early ADP is 53.
I agree with where he went in this draft. I have him 73rd. So all three, I agree with where he went in this draft rather than ADP. In this case, it's because I have Anthony lower. Again, I want a little more proof that he's ready to take that next step. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, he clearly has the upside, hits the ball very hard, good plate discipline, but has some contact issues and has some launch angle issues, and I'll play it a little more cautiously.
I think he'll rank around 55 for me. That sounds right. So I think the ADP is probably closer.
I want to have exposure to Roman Anthony next year, but I like what you're saying, Scott. I totally get it with, not wanting to put too much on early round players who haven't really proven it so far. This is about where James Wood's ADP was last season, and Roman Anthony is just in terms of prospect status and projectability, I guess a somewhat similar player. So
ADP is, or
the ADP is similar to where James Wood was going last year.
Because that paid off. I mean, it paid off for Wood, but Wood had speed.
Although
Anthony
ended up not really stealing a lot of.
How many did he
Wasn't
get?
it only like 12 or 14?
Yeah, I think he got to around 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think at the broader point, his ADP was probably around 50 last year, and I think he finished as a top 50 player. So
yeah, it worked out. But I think there are better alternatives maybe this year. I don't know. I'd have to compare.
Yep. George Springer went at pick 74. He was the 21st outfielder off the board. His early ADP is 109. So 74 or 109.
I think the ADP is too low here. I think I'll rank him probably somewhere between 74 and 109, but I think the ADP is definitely too low.
Yeah, I mean, I have him higher definitely than ADP, also higher than he went in this draft. So I don't know. I wonder who people are taking instead, because that was the issue I had ranking George Springer higher than I felt comfortable with. But it's like, am I really going to pass him up for this guy? It's not that exciting.
So the guys going ahead of him are Jose Altuve, who has second base eligibility, Michael Harris,
definitely not.
Tyler Soderstrom, who has first base eligibility, but you're probably going to play him in the outfield.
Soderstrom, really? A 20 homer, 270 hitting guy?
25 homer.
Seiya Suzuki and Randy Arozarena. But even I'm not sure I'd rather have Cody Bellinger than George Springer either, and there's like a 30 pick difference between them. I would much rather have George Springer than O'Neal Cruz, who is about 35 spots ahead of George Springer right now.
But
I cannot believe O'Neal Cruz's price is still as high as it is. He's 76.
Those players you listed off all have clear limitations to their upside. And George Springer does too.
He was a top 10 hitter just now, though.
But right, exactly. He just did better than I think any of those guys are capable of. So even if he regresses to normal George Springer, not 2024 George Springer when it looked like he was on the decline. Of course, that's within the realm of possibility, but that's not my expectation for him. If he's just normal George Springer, he's worth more than. He's worth at least as much as those guys, and there's the chance he gives you more.
And then the next two after him are Teoscar Hernandez and Andy Pages. So much rather have George Springer than those two guys
For sure.
I'll probably rank him closer to 100, but within the outfield rankings, I think what you guys are saying makes sense. I think he's probably closer to like a top 15 guy, but maybe that just means I'm going to rank outfielders a little bit lower overall heading into next season. I mentioned Ben Rice. He went at pick 77 in this draft. To me, that was fun. The fifth catcher off the board, the early ADP is 76. So we were kind of right on there with Ben Rice. Will you guys do it? Will you guys use a top 75 pick on Ben Rice?
Like I said, I have him 84th. So I'm right about there. It wouldn't take much for me to get him into the top 75.
I just don't think it makes much sense to jump the market on any catchers this year with how deep the position is. Like, someone's gonna fall. I got Agustin Ramirez with the 11th pick of the 11th round. That will never happen again. That was a fluke of this draft, not having rankings, and just I think people forgot about him. But like, Drake Baldwin went in the 12th. Samuel Basallo went in the 14th. I think that Ivan Herrera, I know he doesn't have catcher eligibility to open the season, but he went in the 19th to Scott. I just think it's not going to make sense to jump ADP on any catcher. I think you should just, if you want to take a catcher, figure out what range you want to take a catcher in, and whichever one is left is what I'd say. Because
here's the thing, though, because I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And I had the same thought as I was putting together my top 600. But it's almost like, and I know this sounds weird, that thought is almost like discrediting Ben Rice for having catcher eligibility because, catcher's so deep. Like, if I just was ranking Ben Rice as a first baseman, which is probably the position he's actually going to play,
mm-hmm.
and we're hearing now probably full time. So that's my biggest concern for him addressed. If I'm just ranking him as a first baseman, 75th seems totally appropriate. I mean, relative to like, that's the same spot. It's a little earlier than Pasquantino. I might prefer Pasquantino to Rice, but it's the same general vicinity. And then the catcher eligibility is a nice bonus.
Yeah.
What we would normally think
That's
of as
fair.
a huge bonus. It's just not quite as big this year because of how deep the position is.
And both the draft and the ADP that we're referencing are 2 catcher leagues too.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind. Catchers will go a little bit earlier in these formats. I totally hear what you're saying, Chris, just in terms of the position and catcher being so good. But man, if there was ever a catcher to do it for, it's just, man,
Well, but
Ben Rice's upside just feels.
Yeah, but can't you make that case for, if there was ever a catcher to do that for, it's the one who just had 22 homers and 16 steals as a rookie? Can't you make that same case for Agustin Ramirez? What about the guy who just won National League Rookie of the Year and might play even more than he did this year? I don't know, man. I get it. I one thing though I will say is falling in love with one player can often be a mistake because you're cornering yourself on one outcome with Ben Rice. If you are saying, like, look, if you rank him 80th, okay, who cares? But if you're saying, like, I'm going to get Ben Rice, well, what that means is if his ADP is 75, you can't risk letting him go in the 6th round. Even if you have the first pick of the 6th round, he may not make it there. First pick of the 6th round is 61st. So, like, if you're saying I'm going to be the one who drafts Ben Rice, you probably need to commit ahead of time to drafting him in the 5th round. And if enough people start doing that, and I think that's what's going to happen, by February, it's going to be, I've got to take Ben Rice in the 4th round.
Yeah.
And
I can see him being this year's Lawrence Butler, where the hype is so big, so early. You got me talking about how much I love him. He's already going about a round sooner than I rank him. So what's it going to end up looking like in March?
And I think, like, Lawrence Butler had a decent season. He was a useful fantasy player, but you reach a point where it's not true to say that there's nowhere to go but down, because I think Ben Rice could legitimately be a 30-plus homer guy who hits 275 and puts up huge counting stats because he's playing every day at first base. It's possible Ben Rice is the number 1 catcher next season. But once you start pushing him that high, there is just no margin for error on that pick. And so I think we should view the depth of the catcher position this season as a luxury. And even though you love Ben Rice, and you should, I love him too, he's not the only catcher you should love.
You're talking way too rationally about Ben Rice right now, Chris. And
I think that's probably going to be the problem. Yeah.
What about here? Back-to-back Braves pitchers, and they're both named Spencer. So Strider at pick 79, Schwellenbach at pick 95. The ADP for Strider is 87. The ADP for Schwellenbach is 82. The Strider one just completely
shocking.
Blows me away because towards the end of the season, we were talking about him like, oh, will he even be drafted as a top 36 starting pitcher? Here, he's SP 19 early on. Man, people are just fully expecting him to bounce back. Well, not
that might be an NFBC thing because they're aware of how high the strikeout upside theoretically is, and you chase the theoretical outcome a lot more in NFBC because you're competing against a lot more teams. So.
And I think especially at this point in the calendar, it makes more sense to because there's no safety at this point. Anything could happen in the next 5 months.
Both of these are surprising to me, though, that they were drafted back-to-back. To me, Schwellenbach is too low, and Strider is too high.
I agree.
Schwellenbach's actually my number 15 SP, so I have him 20 spots earlier than this. And I'm like, he's not worry-free. He's coming back from an elbow fracture that was a usage-based injury. That's always concerning. That was following a conscious effort to chase velocity, and he might need to back off that a little bit. But we already know what Schwellenbach looks like with a little less velocity because it was his rookie season. And it was still getting him drafted as a top 20 starting pitcher, I believe. So I am fine ranking him 15th. And okay, there's a little more injury risk, but you know what? I have Jacob deGrom ranked 14th. I have Blake Snell ranked 13th. Like that's just part of the deal with starting pitchers once you get past the real workhorses.
And Strider, he went from having one of the best, maybe the best fastball in baseball, a pitch that he had to throw 60% of the time, to having a fastball that was a legitimate problem for him last season. It was a bad pitch. It was below average whiff rates, some of the worst results on balls in play. I'm not saying he can never get back to that, but we
need evidence, right?
There was no sign. Like, I don't know. There was like 1 12 or 14 strikeout game for Strider, right? But there was no forward momentum that you could point to, really. Like, he had a 2.79 ERA in September across 5 starts. That was 26 strikeouts to 13 walks and 29 innings of work. And that was after a 10 ERA in August. I'm rooting for it, but man, I don't think he's a top 100 pick.
There was a 7-start stretch in the middle of the season where he looked like I don't know exactly how. I don't know how the fastball was playing specifically, but the results were vintage Strider. He had
the 2 double-digit strikeout games and a bunch of 8 strikeout games.
Yeah, he had 12.4 K per 9 during that 7-start stretch, a 2.53 ERA, a 2.46 FIP. So he was looking like he was back on track, and then things really unraveled from there, and he never. He didn't look dominant again the rest of the season. He seems aware of the issue. He's spent some time at a facility in Atlanta, like a pitching lab, trying to regain that old fastball shape. I think he could have more success with that, dedicating himself to that in the offseason rather than trying to address it in season. And I do think if he goes to work a little more on his curveball and or changeup and broadens his arsenal some, it would take the pressure off the fastball. I still think there are ways Strider could pull this together, but I got to see some proof that it's happening before I invest in him as a top 20 SP, especially seeing how deep the position is.
And you look at the ADP and you've got Jesus Luzardo going about 5 picks after him. I think it's a similar upside-downside case there. Yuri Perez obviously has a ton of upside. Cal Bradish has ace upside. Nolan McLean, obviously, I think everybody loves him. Yes, Spencer Strider, if he can get back to 2023 and 2023 and 2022, could be a huge value there. But there are plenty of really talented pitchers going a lot later than him who weren't among the worst pitchers in baseball last season.
Yeah. Zach Wheeler, I've got to mention. I mean, he's the biggest wild card in fantasy right now. He had thoracic outlet decompression surgery. We don't know if he's going to be ready for opening day. We don't know what he's going to look like once he comes back. He went at pick 99 as the SP24. His early ADP is 132. And listen to this range. A high pick of 34, a low pick of 344. So people don't know. I mean, it's very early in the process, but people have no idea what to make of Zach Wheeler, and I don't blame them.
I think we got that quote from Dave Dombrowski that they're hoping he can be ready for opening day, and I think people are going to get excited about that. But it's not just a question of whether Zach Wheeler will pitch a full season. It's just, will he be good? Now, I did find a study that showed that results from thoracic outlet syndrome are not as bad as we tend to think.
Certainly not for addressing a blood vessel.
Well, the problem is, I think the sample that they used for this study was like 29 pitchers total, which is a very small sample to begin with.
Sure.
Only, I think, 3 of them were the type of surgery that Zach Wheeler had. Sure. So it's just, there's very little to go on. There are some real success stories. I think Miles Michaelis. Merrill Kelly. One of those guys. I always get those 2 guys. I know they're different now, but when they first arrived, they were around the same type of pitcher, and one of them had thoracic outlet syndrome surgery. There are positives, but I don't know. 100 is probably fair for Wheeler, but once you start pushing it up higher than that, again, it just, I think it's not accounting for enough downside.
Yeah.
I will quickly mention the hype pitchers and where they went in this draft, and then also the ADP. They are almost all likely to go higher than where they were
too low.
Draft.
They were people were just sleeping on them.
Yeah, and it's reflected in the ADP, so you'll see that here. Chase Burns went at pick 129. His early ADP is 128. That one was actually pretty spot on. Nolan McLean went at pick 164. His early ADP is 116. Cam Schlittler at pick 169. The ADP is 130. Emmett Sheehan went at pick 170. The ADP 146. Jacob Misiorowski at 182. The ADP is 129. Trey Savage at 184. The ADP is 155.
And that's going to continue skyrocketing, I think.
Bubba Chandler went at pick 193. The ADP is 162. So I think those guys are much more likely to be in that kind of 120 to 160 range like they are right now and based on early ADP. All right, that was our first mock draft. Again, you can check out the results, all of them on the website. I will put those links in the description. We are going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball Today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.